The restaurant buzzed, a low, comforting hum of clinking glasses and excited chatter. The kind of place you only went to for milestone birthdays or anniversaries you actually wanted to celebrate. Weeks I'd spent wrangling reservations, whispering with her friends, even bribing the pastry chef for the perfect cake. For Lila. Just the sound of her name used to make my chest ache with a stupid, happy pressure. Now it tasted like ash. She looked beautiful, radiant even. A simple black dress that clung to her curves, her hair falling in loose waves down her back. She caught my eye and smiled. A genuine, warm smile that used to be reserved just for me. It felt like a knife twisting in my gut. Because I knew, even then, something was wrong. The smile didn't reach her eyes. I'd been so caught up in making everything perfect. I'd missed the subtle shifts, the tiny cracks in our foundation. I'd been too busy planning the party to notice we weren't a party anymore. Around the table, our friends laughed, oblivious. Liam, my best friend since kindergarten, cracked a joke about Lila turning the big 2-6, and she playfully swatted his arm. Across from me, Maya, Lila's closest confidante, raised her glass in a silent toast. Everyone was celebrating. Everyone except me, who was slowly drowning in a rising tide of dread. The food arrived, obscenely expensive and perfectly plated. I picked at my steak, forcing down each bite, trying to ignore the knot tightening in my throat. Lila, usually a chatty whirlwind, was strangely quiet, her eyes darting around the room, landing on everyone but me. The cake arrived, a decadent chocolate masterpiece with sparkling candles. Everyone cheered as the waiter presented it to Lila, singing Happy Birthday off-key. She beamed, blowing out the candles in one powerful gust. Okay, everyone, quiet down, she said, tapping her glass with a spoon. The room fell silent, all eyes on her. I should have known then. Should have seen the glint of something dangerous in her eyes. I just wanted to say thank you all so much for coming tonight. This means the world to me. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the faces of our friends, finally settling on me. And a special thank you to my wonderful boyfriend Asher. He's been so amazing. I felt a surge of relief, a foolish, naive hope that maybe I was just being paranoid. So amazing, in fact, she continued, her voice suddenly taking on a strange, almost detached tone, that I'm happy to say I finally see him as a true best friend. And nothing more. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. The clinking of silverware, the murmur of conversation, all died away. The silence was deafening. My blood ran cold. The room spun. My vision blurred. I stared at her, uncomprehending. A joke? It had to be a joke. A sick, twisted, unbelievably cruel joke. But the look on her face, the unwavering certainty in her eyes, told me it was anything but. She kept talking. I barely registered the words, just a jumbled mess of platitudes and justifications. Something about needing to be honest, about realizing her feelings had changed, about loving me but not in that way. Every syllable was a hammer blow, shattering the carefully constructed world I'd built around us. I felt myself shrinking, becoming smaller and smaller under the weight of her words, under the judging eyes of our friends. An idiot, a fool, a public spectacle. That's what I was. I wanted to scream, to lash out, to demand an explanation. But I couldn't. I was paralyzed, trapped in a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Around the table, a few brave souls attempted to salvage the situation. Liam, bless his heart, tried to make a joke about Lila having too much wine. Maya awkwardly suggested we all cut the cake. But it was no use. The damage was done. The air was thick with discomfort, with pity, with the unspoken question hanging over everyone's heads. What the hell just happened? I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All I wanted to do was escape. I stood up, slowly, deliberately. My chair scraped against the floor. the sound echoing in the oppressive silence. I didn't look at Lila. I couldn't. I grabbed my coat from the back of my chair, my hands shaking so badly I could barely manage to put it on. I didn't say a word. Not a single word. I just turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving everything behind. My friends, my dignity, my future, everything. The cool night air hit me like a slap in the face. I stumbled down the sidewalk, my vision blurring with tears. I didn't know where I was going or what I was going to do. All I knew was that I had to get away. My phone started buzzing in my pocket. Lila. Of course. I ignored it. I couldn't talk to her. Not now. Not ever, maybe. I kept walking blindly until I reached the park a few blocks away. I sank down onto a bench, burying my face in my hands. The anger came next, a burning, all-consuming rage that threatened to tear me apart from the inside out. How could she do this to me? How could she humiliate me like that, in front of everyone we knew? I pulled out my phone, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through my contacts. Liam! He'd understand. But before I could hit the call button, another text message popped up from Lila. Asher, please, call me. I stared at the message, my heart pounding in my chest. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to block her number and never speak to her again. But another, smaller, weaker part of me still clung to the hope that there was some explanation, some way to fix this. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and pressed the call button. Asher? Her voice was shaky, laced with anxiety. What? I managed to choke out, my voice hoarse. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I didn't mean for it to happen like that. Didn't mean for it to happen like that? I repeated, my voice rising. Are you kidding me? You just broke up with me in front of 12 people. What did you think was going to happen? I know. It was stupid. I panicked, but I had to tell you. I couldn't keep pretending anymore. Pretending. The anger flared up again, hotter and more intense than before. Pretending? I was planning our future, Lila. I was happy. What the hell happened? There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I just don't feel the same way anymore, she finally said, her voice barely a whisper. I still love you, but it's not the same. It's more like a brother, or a really, really good friend. A brother? I repeated, the word tasting like poison in my mouth. So that's it? After 2 years, I'm just your brother now? Please, Asher, don't make this harder than it already is, she pleaded. Harder? I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You've already made it as hard as it possibly can be. I thought we were mature enough to handle this like adults, she continued, ignoring my outburst. I thought you would understand. Understand? Understand that you decided to dump me in the most humiliating way possible? Understand that you completely blindsided me and ruined my life? Is that what you wanted me to understand? I just wanted to be honest, she said, her voice cracking. I didn't want to keep living a lie. And what about me, Lila? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. What about my feelings? What about everything we built together? She didn't answer. You know what? I said, my voice trembling. I can't do this. I can't talk to you right now. I need some time to process this. Asher, please don't hang up, she begged. But I didn't listen. I hung up the phone, cutting off her voice, cutting off the last remaining thread of hope. I sat there on the park bench, alone in the darkness, the weight of my broken heart crushing me. The city lights blurred in front of my eyes, and the sound of traffic faded into a dull hum. I was lost, broken, and completely, utterly alone. The next few days were a blur. I called in sick to work, claiming a sudden, violent flu. The truth, that I was emotionally incapacitated, unable to face the world, let alone spreadsheets, was too raw to admit. My apartment, usually a sanctuary, felt like a prison. Every object held a memory of Lila. The mismatched mugs we'd collected on our travels, The framed photo of us hiking in Yosemite, the soft blanket she always used on movie nights. Each one was a tiny shard of glass, piercing my heart anew. I couldn't sleep. When I did, I was plagued by nightmares. Lila laughing as she walked away, her face morphing into a cruel caricature, our friends pointing and whispering, their faces filled with pity and amusement. During the day, I wandered around the apartment like a ghost, unable to eat, unable to focus, unable to escape the constant replay of that night in the restaurant. Liam tried to reach me, texting and calling incessantly. I ignored him. I didn't want to talk to anyone, didn't want to explain, didn't want to face the awkward sympathy or the well-meaning platitudes. I just wanted to be left alone to wallow in my misery. Finally, on the third day, he showed up at my door unannounced. "Open up, Asher," he said, his voice firm. "I know you're in there." I hesitated, then reluctantly opened the door. He barged in, his face etched with concern. "What the hell, man?" he said, his eyes scanning the messy apartment. "You look like you haven't slept in days." I shrugged, turning away from his gaze. "I haven't." He grabbed my arm, turning me to face him. "You can't keep doing this to yourself. You need to talk." I pulled away, shaking my head. "There's nothing to talk about. She broke up with me. In front of everyone. End of story. There's always more to the story, Ash. And bottling it up isn't going to help." He pushed me down onto the couch and sat beside me, his presence a comforting weight in the suffocating silence. "Tell me what happened," he said, his voice gentle. I resisted at first, but the dam inside me was already cracked. The words came pouring out, a jumbled mess of anger, hurt, and confusion. I told him about the weeks of planning, the perfect birthday dinner, the sickening surprise. I told him about Lila's coldness, her detached demeanor, the way she'd looked at me like I was a stranger. Liam listened patiently, offering no judgment, no easy answers, just a steady presence and a knowing nod. When I finally finished, I felt exhausted, but also strangely lighter. The act of verbalizing the pain had somehow lessened its intensity. That's rough, man," Liam said after a moment of silence. "I'm really sorry," I nodded, unable to speak. "Look, I don't know what to say to make you feel better," he continued, "but I know you can't let this define you. You're stronger than this, Ash." He stood up, clapping me on the shoulder. "Get some sleep. Take a shower. And then let's go grab some food. My treat." I hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." It was a small step, but it was a step nonetheless. That night, I managed to sleep for a few hours, the first real sleep I'd had in days. When I woke up, I still felt the ache in my chest, but it was a little less sharp, a little less overwhelming. I took Liam's advice and took a long, hot shower. I shaved, got dressed in clean clothes, and even managed to force down a piece of toast. Meeting Liam for lunch was excruciating at first. The restaurant was crowded and noisy, and I felt self-conscious, like everyone was staring at me, judging me. But Liam's easygoing presence helped to ease my anxiety. He steered the conversation away from Lila, talking about work, about sports, about anything and everything to distract me from my pain. By the end of the meal, I felt a flicker of something I hadn't felt in days: hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could survive this. Maybe I could even move on. But moving on from Lila felt like climbing a mountain with broken legs. Every step was agonizing. Every breath was a struggle. I started going to the gym again, throwing myself into workouts with a desperate intensity. I spent hours lifting weights, running on the treadmill, pushing my body to its limits. The physical exhaustion helped to numb the emotional pain, at least for a little while. I also started seeing a therapist, a kind, middle-aged woman named Dr. Evans. She listened patiently to my ramblings, offering insights and strategies to help me cope with my grief and anger. Dr. Evans helped me understand that Lila's actions were not a reflection of my worth, but rather a reflection of her own internal struggles. She helped me see that I deserved to be with someone who truly loved and appreciated me, someone who wouldn't humiliate me in front of my friends. But even with the support of Liam and Dr. Evans, the healing process was slow and painful. I still thought about Lila constantly, replaying our memories, wondering what went wrong. I still felt a pang of jealousy whenever I saw happy couples, a reminder of what I had lost. A month had passed, a month of agonizing self-reflection, tentative steps forward, and the occasional devastating relapse. I was functioning, going to work, seeing friends when I could manage it, even managing the odd smile. But the Lila-shaped hole in my life was still raw, a constant, throbbing reminder of what I'd lost. Then I saw her. I was grabbing coffee at the corner shop, lost in thought, when she walked in. Lila. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and she wore a simple dress, but she was still beautiful. The sight of her sent a jolt of adrenaline through my system, my heart hammering against my ribs. I froze, unsure what to do. Should I ignore her? Walk away? Confront her? Before I could decide, she saw me. Her eyes widened in surprise and her face flushed. Asher, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I didn't say anything, just stared at her, my emotions swirling inside me like a tornado. I didn't expect to see you here, she stammered, her eyes darting around the coffee shop. Really? I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Because I'm sure this is just as awkward for me as it is for you. She winced, her face falling. I know I hurt you, Asher. I'm really, truly sorry. Sorry, I repeated, my voice rising. Sorry doesn't even begin to cover it, Lila. You humiliated me, you shattered my heart, and you ruined my life. And all you can say is sorry? I know, she said, her voice trembling. It was a terrible thing to do. I was selfish, and I was cowardly. I should have talked to you in private, but I just didn't know how. So you decided to stage a public breakup instead? I said, shaking my head in disbelief. That's your idea of handling things like an adult? I wasn't thinking straight, she pleaded. I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you, but I knew I couldn't keep living a lie. A lie? I said, my voice laced with anger. What lie? We were happy, Lila. We were building a life together. What lie were you living? She hesitated, then took a deep breath. I wasn't happy, Asher. Not really. I felt like I was. Suffocating. Like I was trapped in a box. A box? I repeated, confused. What are you talking about? I felt like I was playing a role, Asher. The role of the perfect girlfriend. The role of the happy couple. But it wasn't me. It wasn't who I really am. And who are you, Lila? I asked, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Because I thought I knew you, but apparently, I was wrong. She looked down at the floor, her eyes filling with tears. I don't know, Asher. I'm still trying to figure that out, so you decided to figure it out by destroying my life in the process? I said, shaking my head in disbelief. No, that's not what I meant, she protested. I didn't want to hurt you, Asher. I swear I didn't. But I couldn't keep pretending. I had to be true to myself. And what about me, Lila? I asked, my voice trembling. What about being true to me? What about the promises we made to each other? What about the future we planned together? She didn't answer, just stood there, her eyes filled with tears. You know what, Lila? I said, my voice hardening. I don't want to hear it. I don't want your apologies, I don't want your explanations, and I definitely don't want your pity. Just leave me alone, please. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the coffee shop, her face etched with regret. The encounter left me shaken and angry. I spent the rest of the day replaying the conversation in my head, wondering if I had been too harsh, if I should have listened to her explanation. But the truth was, I didn't want to hear her explanation. I didn't want to understand her reasons. I just wanted her to go away and leave me alone to heal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned in bed, my mind racing with thoughts of Lila. I wondered if she was happy now, if she had found the true version of herself. I wondered if she ever thought about me, if she ever regretted what she had done. Finally, I got out of bed and went to the living room. I turned on the TV and started flipping through the channels, but nothing could hold my attention. I found myself drawn to the framed photo of us hiking in Yosemite. I picked it up and stared at it, my heart aching with longing. We looked so happy in the photo, so carefree, so in love. It was hard to believe that just a few months ago, we had been those people. It was hard to believe that we had lost all of that. I sat there for a long time, staring at the photo, my mind filled with memories of Lila. The good times, the bad times, the silly times, the serious times. All of it, the entire tapestry of our relationship, played out before my eyes. And then something shifted. A subtle change in perspective. A tiny crack in the wall of anger and resentment I had built around myself. I realized that while Lila had hurt me deeply, she had also given me a great deal of joy. She had taught me how to love, how to laugh, how to open myself up to another person. She had made me a better person, even though our relationship had ended in such a painful way. And I realized that I couldn't hold on to the anger and resentment forever. It was poisoning me, preventing me from moving on, preventing me from finding happiness again. I knew that forgiving Lila wouldn't erase the pain, but it would free me from its grip. It would allow me to move on with my life, to learn from my mistakes, and to find love again someday. It was a difficult decision, but it was the right one. I put the photo back on the shelf, a new sense of peace settling over me. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew that I was ready to face it. I was ready to let go of the past and embrace the possibility of a brighter future. The forgiveness didn't come easily. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a slow, gradual chipping away at the anger and resentment. I started focusing on the good memories, the times we laughed until our stomachs hurt, the quiet moments of intimacy and connection. I acknowledged the pain she had caused, but I also recognized the joy she had brought into my life. The weeks that followed were a period of quiet healing. I continued therapy, delved deeper into my passions, photography and hiking, things I'd let slip during my relationship with Lila, and reconnected with friends I'd unintentionally neglected. I even started dating again. It was terrifying at first, like learning to walk after being bedridden for months. The first few dates were awkward and stilted, filled with forced conversation and a nagging sense of comparison to Lila. But slowly, gradually, I started to enjoy myself. I met interesting people, listened to their stories, and shared my own. I learned that there was a whole world of possibilities out there, a world beyond the confines of my broken heart. One evening, I stumbled upon a photography exhibit showcasing the work of local artists. I was drawn to a series of landscapes, each capturing the raw beauty of the natural world. The images were breathtaking, filled with light and shadow, and a sense of profound peace. I was so engrossed in the exhibit that I didn't notice someone standing next to me until they spoke. "Beautiful, aren't they?" a woman's voice said. I turned to see a woman with kind eyes and a warm smile. She had short, dark hair and wore a simple dress that accentuated her natural grace. "They are," I said, smiling back. "They remind me of Yosemite. Have you been?" "I wish," she said, laughing softly. "I've always wanted to go. My name is Chloe, by the way." "Asher," I said, shaking her hand. We talked for hours that night. About photography, about travel, about life. I found myself drawn to her easygoing nature and her genuine curiosity. She listened intently as I spoke, her eyes filled with empathy. For the first time since my breakup with Lila, I felt a genuine connection with someone. I felt a spark of hope, a flicker of possibility. We started seeing each other regularly. We went hiking, explored new restaurants, and spent hours talking about our hopes and dreams. I learned that Chloe was a writer, working on her first novel. She was passionate about social justice and dedicated to making the world a better place. She was everything that Lila wasn't: She was grounded, compassionate, and fiercely independent. She challenged me, inspired me, and made me laugh. And most importantly, she saw me for who I truly was, flaws and all. She didn't try to change me, didn't try to mold me into someone I wasn't. She accepted me, loved me, and supported me unconditionally. One evening, as we were sitting on my couch, watching a movie, Chloe turned to me and took my hand. "Asher," she said, her voice soft, "I need to tell you something." My heart started to race. I knew what was coming. "I'm falling in love with you," she said, her eyes searching mine. I took a deep breath, relief washing over me. "I'm falling in love with you too, Chloe." We kissed. A slow, tender kiss that sealed our connection. That night, I went to bed with a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. I knew that I had finally moved on from Lila. I had found someone who loved me for who I was, someone who made me feel happy and whole. A year passed. Chloe and I were still together, our relationship growing stronger every day. We had moved in together, adopted a rescue dog, and were starting to plan our future. One day, I received a message from a number I didn't recognize. "Asher, it's Lila. I know it's been a long time, but I was wondering if we could talk." My heart skipped a beat. I hesitated for a moment, then decided to respond. "What do you want, Lila?" I texted back. "I just wanted to apologize again," she replied. "I know I hurt you, and I wanted to tell you that I'm truly sorry. I hope you can forgive me someday." I stared at the message, a wave of emotions washing over me. Anger, sadness, resentment, and something else. Something that felt a lot like closure. I took a deep breath and started typing. "Lila," I wrote, "I appreciate the apology. I've moved on and I'm happy now. I hope you are too. Thank you, Asher," she replied. "I'm glad to hear that. Take care." I closed the message and deleted the conversation. I didn't need to hold on to the past anymore. I had forgiven Lila, and I had found happiness again. I walked into the living room, where Chloe was sitting on the couch, reading a book. I sat down beside her and put my arm around her. "Everything okay?" she asked, looking up at me. "Everything's perfect," I said, smiling. She smiled back, leaning her head against my shoulder. In that moment, I knew that I had finally found my happy ending. It wasn't the ending I had envisioned, but it was the ending I needed. The ending where I learned to forgive, to let go, and to open my heart to the possibility of new love. The ending where I found myself again, stronger and more resilient than ever before. The ending where I finally understood that sometimes the greatest blessings come disguised as heartbreaks. 5 years have passed since that disastrous birthday dinner. 5 years of healing, growth, and unexpected joy. Chloe and I are married now. We have a small house with a sprawling garden, a testament to our combined love for nature and a haven from the city's chaos. We even have a little girl, Alara, who inherited Chloe's kind eyes and my stubborn streak. I often think back to that night at the restaurant, to the shock and pain, the humiliation and despair. It feels like a lifetime ago, a distant nightmare, but I don't regret it. Not anymore. Because that night, as devastating as it was, forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities, to reevaluate my priorities, and to ultimately find my true self. If Lila hadn't broken my heart, I wouldn't have been open to meeting Chloe. I wouldn't have discovered my passion for photography. I wouldn't have reconnected with my friends. And I certainly wouldn't have Alara, the greatest joy of my life. Sometimes the universe has a funny way of working things out. Sometimes the most painful experiences lead to the most beautiful transformations. I saw Lila again just once, about a year after our last text exchange. I was at a local art fair, showcasing my photography. Chloe and Alara were with me. Alara strapped to my chest in a baby carrier, her tiny hand gripping my shirt. I saw her across the crowd, her face etched with a mixture of surprise and something that almost looked like regret. She was with a woman, holding hands, their faces radiant with happiness. We made eye contact for a brief moment. I offered a small, polite nod. She returned it with a hesitant smile. And then we both turned away, each of us continuing our lives on separate paths. There was no animosity, no lingering pain, just a quiet acknowledgement of a shared past. As I turned back to Chloe and Alara, a wave of warmth washed over me. I realized that I was exactly where I was supposed to be, with the people I was meant to be with. The past was behind me, the future was ahead, and I was ready to embrace it, with open arms and a grateful heart. I squeezed Chloe's hand, looked down at Alara's sleeping face, and smiled. Life, I realized, is a messy, unpredictable, and often painful journey, but it's also a beautiful, extraordinary, and ultimately worthwhile adventure. And I wouldn't trade it for anything, not even for a perfect birthday dinner that never ended.